Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a quick first impression video, but first we have to answer the question that I started with. Did Cold Steel create the ultimate EDC knife? And the answer to that is yes, they did, although it's not this knife. Now this knife is definitely aimed at EDC, but the very best EDC folder has got to be either the American Lawman or the Ultimate Hunter. Now I don't have an Ultimate Hunter, but I do have an AD10, which is the sort of idea behind the Ultimate Hunter. The Ultimate Hunter was like the production AD10 before there was an actual production AD10. And so those two knives are nearly perfect. Comfortable in hand, lightweight, easy to carry, super strong lock. Just everything that you could ever want in an EDC knife that will do anything you would need it to do, almost within reason. So yes, the ultimate EDC from Cold Steel, and really, I mean, the American Lawman competes with anything out there that's in contention for a really good EDC. These would easily both be in the top 5 best EDCs of all time. Now, does the Frenzy belong on that list with them? It's got a lot of good stuff going for it, but I don't know that I'd place it in like the top 5 or top 10 best EDC knives of all time. And so that's my initial impression. Cold Steel has done a great job at a pretty good EDC knife, but they're not quite as good as some of their, it's not quite as perfect as some of their previous offerings. So let me say, first of all, I love the original Cold Steel Frenzy. I have a number of videos about that, including one that still gets some heat from time to time because the internet cannot understand nuance or sarcasm. That's okay. But the full size Cold Steel Frenzy is a really cool, really great knife. This is a more carryable version of that for sure. And as such, it is really good. It's a useful cutting tool. It's comfortable in hand, super strong lock. Great blade steel choice on this. So the blade steel here is 3V. Now, I will say going with the 3V and emphasizing toughness is definitely in Cold Steel's wheelhouse. I feel like they could have done a slightly better job of that by making this a little bit bigger. I think they went a little too far with trying to get this down to a comfortable EDC size. I think a 4-inch version would have been sort of the Goldilocks zone for this particular knife. A couple of reasons for that we'll get to in a minute. Before we do, let me tell you the size of this. So this is just a hair under 8 inches, and basically I think the box says 8 inches right on, but those Cold Steel numbers on the box, by the way, are always kind of nominal. 3.5 inches on the blade, 3 7/16 cutting edge. When you close the knife, it does land at just almost perfectly 4.5 inches. Okay, so pretty small knife in pocket. The grip area for a small knife, I have to say the grip area on this is truly impressive. So there's almost 4 inches, 3 7/8 grip area. That is the distance between here and here. Okay, so even if you've got pretty large hands, this knife is probably going to fit you okay. Now, the reason I say okay and not great is because the handle is very slim. We've had this discussion many times on the channel. When you make a handle super slim like this, this puts me in mind of, the Boost Blade Smoke. It puts me in mind of the Benchmade 940, all great knives. But when it comes to doing a lot of difficult work, you just don't have enough handle to get your hand wrapped around fully so that, you end up getting a little bit of movement here. All right. Now, that's one of the reasons, I'll get to the second one in a second. That's one of the reasons I think a slightly larger version of this would have been better. 2.79 ounces. Again, very lightweight. Hardly noticed this thing. And that again brings me to the fact that, if you'd gone to 3 ounces with that little bit of extra size, a couple of things could have changed. One, it would have meant a thicker handle. Like to make this, right, a 1/2 inch longer, you got to be up to about here. We'd end up with approximately a 4-inch blade, approximately a, 3/4 inch knife or something like that overall. Still very comfortable in pocket, still very lightweight, still very capable. But the other thing, so one of the things that would have changed was the thickness of that handle. All right, if you just kind of blew this up all proportionally. The other thing that would have changed is the distance here on the primary bevel. Okay, so this bevel is quite abrupt, and the blade steel is nearly 1/8 of an inch thick. So this is pretty actually thick blade steel done in 3V, which is really, really cool. But that does mean you've got a pretty abrupt transition here. So this is not going to be a great slicer. Now, I suppose Cold Steel could argue we weren't really aiming at making a great slicer. Fine, I totally get that. You know, and if you're opening envelopes or, you know, cutting cardboard or doing a bunch of standard EDC tasks, does it really matter? Probably not. Okay, so by the way, very sharp. I do like the edge that this steel took for me. I don't know why it's ripping like that. A second ago, it was cutting like crazy, but it is actually very sharp. That's just user error that you're seeing there. All right, let me bring out the nice little foam testy thing. And boy, it's so sharp that it's actually performing better than it would. But even at this very, very sharp, almost polished edge, okay, it's still pretty thick. So you can see that once I start moving through the material, I'm moving a fair bit, and you can see how quickly it forces this to open up because it's a pretty abrupt grind angle there. All right, so is that the end of the world? Am I saying this is a bad knife? Absolutely not. This is a great knife, and there are a lot of things that this has going for it. The handle is good enough. The blade is good enough. The steel is fantastic. There's a lot to love about this knife for sure, not the least of which is that very aggressive, very cool looking design, which I will say I absolutely love. All right. But I do think overall there would have been a slight improvement by making this just a little bit bigger. Not so much for a desire for a bigger knife. This is big enough, but for a desire for a slightly more ergonomic handle and a slightly longer bevel there. All right, so those are my first impressions on the Cold Steel Frenzy. Absolutely great knife. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention one of my favorite things is the clip on this. It's pretty stiff, but that bent over deep carry short clip, I really, really like that. And I would love to see more of this from Cold Steel. It's still got really good retention. It could use a teeny bit more space under the clip there, but this thing disappears. There's barely anything sticking out of your pocket, which is fantastic. And I suppose that could have been a bit of a challenge with a larger version. Okay, guys, those are my first impressions on this knife. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, whether this is a knife that you're super interested in or maybe not so much. You know, I'll admit I'm a big Cold Steel fan, so I'm mildly interested in just about anything that they do that's not, you know, the really, really budget stuff. Really cool knife, definitely well done. And I think this is a pretty compelling offering from Cold Steel. You know, would I buy this as my first Cold Steel? Probably not. Again, as I mentioned, you know, my most recommended Cold Steels are always going to be the American Lawman and the Ultimate Hunter, and of course the Recon 1. But if you're a huge Cold Steel fan like I am, or if you just love this knife, you love the look of it and you want this exact thing, I mean, hey, that's always going to be a possibility for any knife enthusiast or anyone looking for a good folding knife. And this is definitely a good folding knife. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.